They thought fire would erase him. One night, the Mafia torched Bumpy Johnson's cotton club to ash and silence. By dawn, 5 of their own clubs were burning. No warning, no mercy, just a message written in smoke. The smoke still hung in the air when Bumpy Johnson arrived. It was just after dawn. The kind of light that makes everything look softer than it is, but there was nothing soft about what he saw. The cotton club was gone, not damaged, not scarred, gone. Where the entrance used to stand, there was only charred wood and twisted metal. The walls had collapsed inward. The roof was open to the sky. Everything that had been music and laughter and pride the night before was now ash and silence. Bumpy stepped out of the car slowly. His driver stayed behind the wheel. No one spoke. A few neighbors stood across the street watching. They didn't come closer. They didn't need to. They knew what this meant. One of Bumpy's men approached from the side, his face tight with anger. They hit it around 3. Gasoline. Multiple entry points. It was professional. Bumpy didn't respond. He just stared at the ruins. Bumpy, we know who. I know who. His voice was calm. Quiet. That's what made it dangerous. He walked closer to the wreckage, his shoes crunching over broken glass. The smell of burnt wood and leather filled his nose. Somewhere in that pile was the bar where he'd toasted men who were now dead. The stage where Billie Holiday had sung. The back room where deals were made and respect was earned. The Mafia had burned it all. They thought this was a message. They were right, but they didn't understand what message they'd just received in return. Bumpy turned and walked back to the car without another word. By sunrise, they would. The Cotton Club wasn't just a building. It was a statement. In a city where black people were expected to serve, to entertain, to stay quiet and stay small, the Cotton Club was different. It was owned by a black man, run by black men, protected by black men, and it thrived. White folks came to hear the music, celebrities came for the atmosphere, politicians came because they needed Bumpy's favor. But at the end of the night, when the doors closed and the lights went down, that club belonged to Harlem. It was more than profit. It was pride. Bumpy had built it deliberately, not with flash or arrogance, but with precision. He knew the white mob controlled most of the city's nightlife. He knew they watched him. He knew they resented him. But he also knew they couldn't touch him, not without starting a war they weren't sure they could win. So they burned it instead. The Cotton Club had been a line in the sand, a symbol that Harlem wasn't just surviving under Bumpy Johnson, it was winning. It proved that a black man could hold power in a white man's world and not bow, not beg, not break. That's what made it dangerous. The Mafia didn't burn the Cotton Club because it was competition. They burned it because it was proof. Proof that their control wasn't absolute. Proof that respect could be earned outside their system. Proof that Bumpy Johnson didn't need their permission to build an empire. And empires make men nervous. Bumpy understood that. He'd always understood that. He didn't build the Cotton Club to provoke them. He built it because Harlem deserved something beautiful. Something that couldn't be taken away by a landlord or a cop or a politician with a grudge. But now, it was ash. And the people who turned it to ash thought that would be the end of it. They thought Bumpy would rage, or retreat, or come to them with his hat in his hand asking for terms. They didn't understand who he was. Bumpy Johnson didn't ask for terms. He set them. The Cotton Club had been a symbol of what Harlem could be. What came next would be a reminder of what happened when you tried to take that away. Bumpy didn't go home. He went to the back room of a barbershop on 139th Street. The kind of place that looked like nothing from the outside. The kind of place where important things happened quietly. By the time he arrived, 4 men were already waiting. They didn't ask questions. They didn't offer condolences. They just sat and watched him take his seat at the head of the table. Bumpy lit a cigarette. The flame from the match cast shadows across his face. "They hit us at 3, one of the men said. His name was William. Steady, loyal, used accelerant, front and back, wanted to make sure it burned clean. Who saw it? Nobody who'll talk. They cleared the block first. Professional job." Bumpy nodded slowly. He already knew that. The Mafia didn't do sloppy work. Not when they wanted to send a message. They think we'll come loud. another man said. His name was Jerome. Younger. Angrier. They think we'll shoot up one of their spots and give them an excuse to wipe us out. Then we don't come loud. The room went quiet. Bumpy leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands folded. They burned 1 club. We burned 5. Jerome blinked. 5. 5. Before sunrise. William shifted in his seat. Bumpy, that's a declaration. That's not a response, that's a war. No. Bumpy's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. A war is what they'll get if they touch Harlem again. This is a lesson. He tapped ash from his cigarette into a tray. They think we're emotional. They think we'll act foolish and give them justification. But we're not going to give them that. We're going to show them something else. What's that? Jerome asked. Discipline. Bumpy stood and walked to a map pinned to the wall. It showed Lower Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn. 5 locations were already circled in red. He'd known this day would come. He'd been ready for years. These are their clubs, Bumpy said, pointing to each circle. Not the big ones, not the ones the cops protect. The quiet ones, the ones they use to wash money, the ones they think we don't know about. He turned back to the table. We hit all 5 tonight. No guns, no witnesses, just fire. William exhaled slowly. You want them to wake up to the same thing you did. Exactly. Jerome smiled for the first time that morning. When do we move? 2 hours. Get your crews. Keep them small. 3 men per job. In and out. No heroes. No mistakes. The men stood. Bumpy stayed seated, watching them file out one by one. When the door closed, he took one last drag from his cigarette. Then he crushed it out. The first club was in Little Italy. A narrow building wedged between a butcher shop and a tailor. No sign out front. Just a red door with a slot at eye level. The kind of place you didn't walk into unless you were invited. Bumpy's crew arrived at midnight. 3 men. Dark clothes. No weapons except for 2 cans of gasoline and a book of matches. They moved like shadows. 1 man stayed at the corner, watching the street. The other 2 approached the back alley. The door was locked, but locks didn't matter when you weren't planning to go inside. They poured the gasoline along the base of the door, across the wooden frame, under the gap where air slipped through. The smell was sharp and chemical. It filled the alley like a warning. The match flared. The flames caught instantly. They didn't wait to watch. They were gone before the fire reached the windows. The second club was in the Bronx, a basement operation beneath the restaurant. The Mafia ran card games there. High stakes. Cash only. The kind of money that never saw a bank. Bumpy's crew hit it at 1:15. This time they went through the cellar doors. The lock snapped clean with a bolt cutter. They descended into darkness, gasoline sloshing in the cans. The space smelled like cigars and old liquor, poker tables, leather chairs, a safe in the corner that would melt before morning. They doused everything. The walls, the furniture, the floor. 1 match, the room. The floor. 1 match. The room became an oven. They were back on the street in under 3 minutes. The third club was near the docks in Brooklyn. This one was larger, a warehouse the Mafia used for import business. But everyone knew what really moved through those doors. Bumpy didn't send a small crew for this one. He went himself. He stood across the street, hands in his coat pockets, watching as his men worked. 2 of them pried open a side window. Another poured gasoline through the gap, soaking the crates and canvas tarps stacked inside. A dock worker passed by, saw Bumpy standing there, and kept walking. He knew better. The flames went up fast, bright and hungry. The warehouse had too much dry wood, too much fabric. It burned like it had been waiting for it. Bumpy watched until the roof started to glow. Then he got back in the car. The fourth club was uptown, a lounge the Mafia used for meetings. Quiet. Elegant. The kind of place where deals were made over wine and whispered threats. Bumpy's crew arrived at 3:30. They didn't need to break in. One of the kitchen staff owed Bumpy a favor. The back door was left unlocked. They moved through the kitchen, past the bar, into the main room with its velvet chairs and polished tables. Gasoline splashed across the curtains, the carpet, the bar top. The fire spread like a living thing, crawling up the walls, swallowing the ceiling. They left through the same door they'd entered. No one saw them. No one ever did. The fifth club was in Hell's Kitchen. A small joint, pool tables and a jukebox. A front for loan sharking and protection rackets. By the time Bumpy's crew arrived, it was 4:45. The sky was starting to lighten at the edges. They worked fast. Gasoline through the mail slot. Gasoline under the door. Gasoline under the door. Gasoline across the front steps. The match was struck. The flames exploded outward, bright and final. And just like that, it was done. 5 clubs. 5 fires. All before the sun came up. Bumpy sat in the back of his car as they drove through Harlem. The streets were still quiet. The city hadn't woken yet. But it would. And when it did, the Mafia would understand what Bumpy Johnson had known all along. You don't burn a man's kingdom and expect him to bow. You get burned back. The phone call started at 6. First, the Bronx, then Brooklyn, then Little Italy, then Uptown, then Hell's Kitchen. 5 fires, 5 clubs, all within hours of each other. The Mafia bosses woke to chaos. Their soldiers scrambled. Their captains demanded answers. Their underbosses tried to piece together what had happened and who was responsible. But deep down, they already knew. There was only one man in the city capable of moving that fast, that clean, that cold. Bumpy Johnson. By 7, Bumpy was back in Harlem. He sat at a small table outside a cafe on Lenox Avenue. The morning sun was soft and warm. The street was beginning to wake. Shopkeepers swept their storefronts. Mothers walked their children to school. Life moved forward like nothing had happened. Bumpy sipped his coffee slowly. A newspaper sat folded beside him. The front page wouldn't have the fires yet. They'd hit too late for the morning edition. But by tomorrow, the city would be talking. He didn't care. This wasn't about headlines. One of his men approached from across the street. His name was Nathaniel. Older, careful. He'd been with Bumpy for over a decade. "They're asking for a sit-down," Nathaniel said quietly. Bumpy didn't look up. "Who's asking?" "Genovese's people. They want to meet today." "Today?" "They said it's urgent." Bumpy took another sip of coffee. He let the silence stretch. Let them wait. Let them feel what it was like to need something from him. "Tell them tomorrow," Bumpy said finally. Nathaniel hesitated. "They said today, Bumpy. I heard you." Bumpy's eyes lifted, calm, steady, unshaken. "Tell them tomorrow. 2 o'clock, Linux and 132nd, neutral ground. And tell them I'm bringing 2 men. If they bring more, the meeting doesn't happen." Nathaniel nodded and walked away. Bumpy sat alone for another 20 minutes. People passed by. Some nodded. Some spoke. A few stopped to shake his hand. He greeted them all with the same quiet respect he always had. No one mentioned the Cotton Club. No one needed to. Harlem knew what had happened, and Harlem knew what came next. A young boy, no older than 10, walked up to Bumpy's table. He held a wooden toy car in his hand, nervously shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Mr. Johnson." Bumpy looked at him. "Yeah, my mama said. She said you're going to make sure we're safe." Bumpy studied the boy for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver dollar. He placed it on the table and slid it toward the boy. "Your mama's right." The boy took the coin, his eyes wide, and ran off down the street. Bumpy watched him go. Then he finished his coffee, folded the newspaper, and stood. The Mafia wanted to talk. Fine, let them talk. But the terms had already been set. They just didn't know it yet. The sit-down happened at 2 o'clock sharp, a small restaurant on Lenox, closed to the public, just 4 men at a table in the back. Bumpy arrived with Nathaniel and William. No guns, no theatrics, just presents. The Mafia sent 2 representatives. One was a captain named Salvatore. The other was an older man, a consigliere named Vincent. Both had been in the life long enough to recognize power when they saw it. They didn't shake hands. Bumpy sat down. His men stood behind him. Vincent spoke first. His voice was tired, controlled. "This has gone far enough." Bumpy said nothing. 5 clubs, Bumpy, you made your point." "Did I?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "You want a war? Because that's what this becomes if we don't settle it here." Bumpy leaned back in his chair. His eyes never left Vincent's. You burned my club. I burned 5 of yours. We're not even. Salvatore's face flushed. The hell we're not. Vincent raised a hand, silencing him. What do you want? Vincent asked. Respect. The word hung in the air. You think you can walk into Harlem, burn what we built, and we'll just take it. You think because we're black we'll bow. You're wrong. Vincent didn't argue. He knew better. The Cotton Club gets rebuilt, Bumpy continued. On my terms, my money, my timeline. And no one touches it. Not your people, not the cops you pay. No one. And if we agree, then this ends. You stay out of Harlem's business. We stay out of yours. But if you ever come at me again... Bumpy leaned forward, his voice dropping to something colder. I won't stop at 5. Vincent studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. We have an understanding. Bumpy stood. The meeting was over. He walked out of the restaurant into the sunlight. Harlem was alive around him. Music drifted from an open window. Children played on the corner. The smell of food cooking filled the air. This was his city. Not because he took it, because he protected it. The Cotton Club would rise again, stronger, better, and every brick would be a reminder. You don't burn Bumpy Johnson. You learn to respect him.